lived in this lovely old house in St. Catharines, built I think in the 1920s by one of the engineers for the Welland Canal, so maybe a bit older, I'm not sure. It had some interesting features. It had a secret passageway, it had strange little cubby holes behind hidden panels, and it definitely had a lot of activity. There were a couple of hot spots in the house, but the main activity emanated from a room at the back of the house on the main floor. My mom would come down early in the morning and frequently find books laid out in patterns on the floor. Things moved about that room, photographs, articles switched out with books and magazines that were on shelves, that type of thing. The dog would not go in that room. We had one dog that wouldn't even cross the dining room floor to get to that room. So it was kind of uncomfortable at times. And I was about 16. I was alone in the house. It was a very dark night, around this time of year, early fall, and about 11 o'clock at night. Now this room had windows all across the back, the one wall overlooking the back of the house, and it had windows down the side, a couple of windows down the side, overlooking a porch. But the rest of it was walled, and we had a big overstuffed chair in the corner. And at the far end was a TV. And I was watching TV and kind of slouched down in the chair, so well into the chair. And it suddenly got very, very cold. Not like a draft, not gradual at all. It was just icy cold. And I was positive there was someone behind me. Only the only thing behind me could have been the chair against a wall in a corner. And I'm looking kind of sideways, and the windows, there's nobody there. And all the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I was all goosebumpy. I was clearly felt like somebody was right behind me. And while I was processing this, I felt a hand. Not a tap, not a brush, definitely oriented from behind, distinctly placed on my shoulder and squeeze. And that was probably one of the creepiest things that I've ever experienced.
When I was about 9 or 10, I woke up in the middle of the night one night and wanted to go see my mom. I didn't feel well and I wanted to go downstairs to see her. And I went to get out of bed, and then I saw a figure in my doorway. It was a girl. She looked about like 12 years old. I wasn't sure what I was seeing, so I looked over to my sister. I shared a room at the time with her. She was fast asleep. I could tell like she was making noises, like I knew she was sleeping. And I looked back to the doorway because I'm like, I really wanted to go see my mom at this point. And she was just standing there, like right in the door, so I couldn't leave the doorway. And I remember everything, the description of her, like she had long dark hair, the top bit like held back in a ribbon. It was a blue dress with a white apron on top, and the only thing that was really weird about it is that she didn't have any facial features. It was just this girl, but like there was no face. It was just like this bright light around her face, and it was a little freaky. I wasn't scared though. I just didn't want to walk through her, so I wasn't going to go downstairs. So it was just this weird experience that I eventually just laid there until I fell back asleep. But it felt so weird in the morning. Like I was just like still not sure if I should go out and leave the room, because she wasn't threatening. Again, I never felt scared, but it was just like this weird experience that she was there, and I was not going to walk through her.
Hi there, my name is Linda. This particular ghost story happened to me when I was a church secretary in town. I had been the church secretary for quite a few years, and every Friday evening, one of my tasks was to print out the prayers and bring them into the church, put them on various locations, the altar, the ambo, on the priest's chair, things like that. And one particular Friday, I had finished up doing what I was doing in the office. I locked the door, which I always did after I made sure that there was nobody there, because from time to time, people used to come in and light candles, or they used to come in and just sit down and pray very quietly and silently. So I used to make sure that there was nobody there, of course, before I did all my deeds, and then lock the door officially for the last time before the weekend. So this particular Friday, I made sure nobody was there. I locked the door, went in, retrieved all the prayers from the desk, and made my way up the aisle towards the altar. And I ascended the stairs. I put the prayers on the chair. I put the prayers on the ambo. And the last place that I would put the prayers was on the altar. So I walked around the altar, placed the prayers on the book, on the altar, and then turned to leave and walk back down the stairs, and then, of course, down the aisle towards the front door. When I got to the second stair, behind me, from behind the altar, came this horrifying laugh, and it sounded like a snicker, kind of like, and there was nobody in the church but me. Now, having been raised Catholic, and having been raised to believe that churches were safe sanctuaries and devoid of any kind of evil, this snicker was terrifying. And I struggled to accept it because it was contrary to everything that my mind wanted to believe or could grasp. So it took a little while for me to move. I was frozen to that stare. Now, bear in mind, I am a paranormal investigator, and I have been for 39 years. So at the time, I had been a paranormal investigator, and I was still a paranormal investigator. And I had been at that time for, oh my gosh, 26, 27 years, 28 years. I never experienced anything that was that malevolent in a sacred location. So I didn't quite know what to do. But everything inside me said, okay, just process this for a time. And then I spun around, expecting to see something, but I saw nothing. I did feel, though, that in this incredibly sacred space, there was something incredibly evil. And then, after a time, that evil dissipated. That's the only word I can use to describe it. It left. And then I gulped, looked around, walked down the stairs, walked to my office, shut down everything, and left, and locked the doors. And it took me quite a long time to come to terms with what happened. And still, sometimes to this day, I find it a difficult thing to come to terms with.
Hi, my name is Kyle. I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened when I was about 14, or mid 70s. That dates me a bit. I was taking sailing lessons in Niagara Lake, and because I lived in St. Catharines, I had to stay with a friend of my mother's who we called Aunt Jeanette, and she lived in a little place called Granny's Cottage, which is one of the oldest houses in Niagara Lake. It was one of the few that was not burned down in 1812. And I would stay with her during the week and go home on weekends. So the first time I went for my sailing lessons, I was away all day, and Aunt Jeanette was working. I came home to my room, went up to my room, and I couldn't open the door. And I thought, well, that's weird because there's no key. And I pushed the door, and I couldn't open it more than about an inch. And I could see that there was something blocking my way. Well, I wasn't strong enough to completely open the door, so I had to wait till Aunt Jeanette was home. When she got home, we pushed the door together and realized that the dresser had been put across the doorway from the inside. And this went on, became a sort of, incidences became a daily occurrence. If it wasn't the dresser across the door, it was things like all the things on my dresser were neatly laid out against the wall in front of the window, or there were little things like that. And at first it kind of freaked me out. After a while I got kind of used to it. And even incidences happened when I wasn't there, but it was the summer I was there. Like tomatoes would be thrown against the kitchen windows from the inside. And one day when I came home from sailing lessons, I was downstairs in the living room, and the front door, somebody knocked on the front door, and I went to answer it, and there was nobody there. So I thought, oh, okay. And then I heard a knock on the back door. So I went to answer it, and there was nobody there. And it was about 20 minutes of nicky-nicky-nine doors on either end of the house until I finally went, will you stop doing that? And then it did. Aunt Jeanette also had a cat who would often sit in the living room and stare at what I presume she saw a person or something, but she would sit there and watch something going around through the living room with her hair standing on end. And I think the most kind of freaky thing that happened was there were a series of books that were all, Aunt Jeanette had them alphabetical ordered. I think they were National Geographics or encyclopedias or something like that. And one day when I was sitting in the living room reading, I noticed that all these books were turned upside down, but alphabetically. So it wasn't a very comfortable place to be. I came to learn that this little house had a reputation in Niagara Lake as being a local haunted house. You won't find it on any of the ghost tours or anything like that, but people know about it. And it is documented as being a haunted house as well. So that's my little haunted house story.